So I'm sure you've seen it this morning. Inflation in the UK has skyrocketed to 3.8%, which is devastating to see for the UK economy, to see once again inflation peaking like that. And who would have thought? Who would have thought if you do a budget and you increase all the business costs, you make them pay more in taxes, you make them pay more in wages, that we would see a peak in inflation? Who would have thought that would happen? I'll tell you something. If I say this again, if me in this spare office in my house is able to see that these people that are in power are making terrible decisions and it's not going to end well, and yet they can't see it, that shows you how much of a worrying place the UK is currently in right now. These people that are making the big decisions, that are paid the big money, and not realising the consequences from their actions, what's going to happen to the UK economy and inflation. It's absolutely terrible for the UK. And then, as always, who is left there to get affected the most? It's me, you, the everyday person in the UK. We're having to go out and pay these increased prices, seeing our wage once again getting squeezed more and more on the average day purchase. Is terrible to see. And it's just so frustrating because the warning signs, everybody was there. They were saying 12 months ago, this isn't going to end well. Inflation's going to end up doubling again, and that is currently where we're at the moment. And maybe next time the government tries to do something like this, maybe they should listen to the hundreds of businesses that wrote to them saying, listen, if you follow through with these tax hikes, it's not going to end well for the economy. It's not going to end well for the inflation. And instead of ignoring them like they did last time, maybe this time they'll start listening and be a bit more responsible. And what's more frustrating right now is if you look at other countries near us, the likes of France, for example, they're currently at inflation rates of 1%. If you look at the likes of Germany, they're currently at a 2% inflation level. Now, the positive this time is that we didn't see the likes of the Financial Times and BBC going with the headlines of inflation unexpectedly rises. At least they didn't do that. There was a couple of standout headlines though from smaller media outlets. So Business Post went with the unexpectedly accelerates. I mean, if you think it was unexpectedly, I don't know what you're doing here. And check this one out from Market Watch. They actually decided to blame Oasis on the reason why inflation has gone up. Some of these media headlines are unbelievable, aren't they? Now, I've got to say, the most frustrating or the most diabolical decision here is the Bank of England. There should be a general inquiry into what has happened at the Bank of England. The fact that interest rates were cut to the lowest level in more than 2 years while inflation was going up in the other direction is incredible. In fact, it should be an inquiry on how that decision was made. You should not be cutting the main priority from the Bank of England is to control inflation. If you are cutting the interest rates, you are not controlling the inflation. You are doing the total opposite, and there also needs to be a look into what the Bank of England are doing, because once again, we look at people in power that are there, paid the big money, there to make the big decisions, and they're making these decisions. It is pretty terrible to see that this is happening in so many places right now in the UK. And that just follows on from what has been a terrible 12 months in power for Labour. Obviously, we've seen the disastrous inflation data that has been caused from an awful budget, but we've seen UK growth forecast halves as well in the last 12 months. We look at the small boat people, they're increasing, they've doubled up in the last 12 months. We look at council taxes increasing once again, which was one of the multiple pledges that have been broken under this current government in the last 12 months. We look at the Channel Steel Island that is going to cost taxpayers even more money. Who voted for that? Who voted for us to end up forking out all our hard-earned money to pay for an island that we own to get rid of it? Unbelievable. Where was the vote on that? Well-formed, the most vulnerable people in society. The one thing where you think Labour would not cross the line and go and attack the people that are on the welfare, and they do that. Welfare reform cuts that's going to force nearly 500,000 disabled people to turn to food banks. The one line where you didn't think Labour would cross, and they've gone and crossed it. You look at the MPs, the current people in power, voting against a national inquiry into grooming gangs, winter fuel allowance payments that put 100,000 pensioners below the poverty line. I think they've done a U-turn on this, and I could have put multiple headlines in here where there was articles about U-turns in this current government. You can see that there's a clear lack of leadership here where you're having to do so many U-turns into your policies. You look at prisoners. The amount of prisoners that are getting sentenced and they're serving a third of the sentences and getting let free back on our streets at the moment. And then what you lead to here is Labour sees biggest poll drop for governing party since 1990. And if you actually look at the approval rate right now for Labour, they are now lower than where the Conservatives were when they left power, and they are actually lower than the Conservatives during 2023 and 2022, which shows you how in 1 year to end at that approval rate is incredible. We know how terrible the last 14 years were under the previous government as well. We look at the countless amount of mistakes that they made, whether that be through the COVID times, the fraud, the lies, all the issues that was caused in the last 14 years. And in my lifetime, the amount of poor governments that we've had in my lifetime, and the fact that this government in already 12 months has got to this low of approval rate, and the amount of poor decisions that they made in the last 12 months, you think the last 14 years cannot be beaten. And these guys have come in and said, actually, watch this. It is incredible to see, and not incredible for a good reason either. Unfortunately, it's me, you that are feeling the burden from all these awful decisions that have happened, which is awful. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this classic video, this classic meme of Mick McCarthy. You know when you think it can't get any worse?
Let's make 1 win in 17. It can't go on like this, can it?
It can.
Well, it can. It can get worse. The problem that we have right now is that when we look at Rachel Reeves and what they're going to have to do in the autumn budget when it comes up in October time, is now because of all this issue, these inflationary issues, we have the growth slowing down. They now have created and crazy spending that they've done in areas that we can't afford. You can only spend if you grow the economy. You know, that's the best way. Every so often, you get a government in power that realises actually taxing people to spend more doesn't work, because then you just end up taxing more, and then you eventually feel it when the economy crashes. The only way you can spend more money if you want to improve the UK, if you want to improve the education system, the healthcare system, the only way, sustainable way to improve that is by growing the economy. By growing the economy, getting people spending more, people are in a better place, people feel more happy, get people to spend more. Because if people go out and spend more, you have more in taxes, and then you can go spend the money on improving all those places that need improvement. And the problem is they've gone totally the opposite direction. We're all seeing the effects. We think it can't get worse. It can, because this is the scary part, is that when we get to this autumn budget in October, there is now a 51 billion black hole to fill because the UK economy hasn't grown as much as what they thought because of all these pressures that are on these businesses. A 51 billion black hole, that's an insane amount to fill. And where's that going to come from? We'll see. I think personally they're going to have to do taxes on income. They said they weren't going to do that. I think that's what they're going to have to do. We're probably going to see the people that invest most into the UK, take the risk with invest into businesses. They're probably going to get hit by tax hikes once again. They're at the point now where they're having to, with taxes already at all-time highs, they're looking at creating more taxes for people to pay. So they're looking at the moment, high-value homes to get taxed more, which, another impact, especially the people down in London. It's not their decision that the average house down there costs how much. So that's going to be a brand new tax that's brought out. But even then, that's not going to fill the hole. They're going to have to get taxes from somewhere else to fill the hole. And ultimately, I think once again, it's going to be me, you, that are going to have to plug the hole. We're going to have to plug the hole from their mismanagement. And I think ultimately, I think they're going to have to go for income taxes. We'll see what happens. It's not great. It's not great. And the thing is that it's just frustrating because me and you always have to end up for the inadequate. This is what happens when we have people in power that shouldn't be in power. Like, these people have no experience of making these decisions and knowing the consequences from it, but yet somehow they get into power. I think I saw a scary thing the other day where it said that of the cabinet, only one person has ever run a business, which is just insane. And because they're making these awful decisions, me and you just have to suffer more and more. And then the thing is, the most annoying thing is that then you go out the street and you go, what for these higher taxes? What rewards are you getting? You're no better off, are you? That's the most frustrating thing. And what also adds on top is that I say this all the time, is that I think the UK can be a great country. It can be a great economy. It can be a great place. The problem is that when you think it can't get any worse, we somehow end up in a position where we do get worse, and we have more people coming in that make you think they can't make any more terrible decisions than what's been previously, and then it happens. That's the frustrating thing that we have in the UK right now. And you know what? I'm counting down the days. I'm counting down days to the next. What is the latest that we can have a general election? August the 15th. August the 15th, 2029. That is the date I'm counting down to where hopefully we can start going in the right direction. But ultimately, I got to say, I look at what is on the table, and you do look and you think, you know, what improvement is there out there? That's the I mean, can it get any worse? We'll see. But yeah, I'm counting down the days to where we can hopefully step in the right direction. But I'm not even confident of that when you look at what's on the table right now. So yeah, not good out there, guys. Hopefully, at some point we'll start going in the right direction, but it looks like it's not going to happen soon, and the future doesn't look much better either. But hopefully, one day we'll get there. You know, the UK has a lot of potential, and hopefully, it is achieved one day. It's not right now. It doesn't look like it's going to be there in the future, but one day, hopefully, someone comes in and sorts a lot of these basic mistakes out, and we don't have to keep paying the burden for it anyway. Sorry guys, bit of a rant, but that's where we're at. Thanks for watching. See you in a bit.